Hey, Comics Cubers. Today we're talking to Katrina Olan, the writer of the science fiction Filipino novel Tablay, and also the co-writer with Ian Santamaria as the artist and the co-writer of the recently released Makina. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Comics Cube. Today I am with a rainy ragdoll, Katrina Olan. How are you?
Hi, Duy. Thanks for having me on. It's so amazing to be here because you've been interviewing a lot of hard hitting talents, I guess, recently. So I'm honored to be here.
Yes, well, lockdown and the pandemic made me do this, so
Oh,
Kat, I'm gonna ask you first and foremost, why do you do what you do? Why do you write what you write?
hmm. Well, it began at a very young age, I guess. I mean, I grew up as an only child, so I mean, I don't have siblings, right? So parang my whole playground, my whole world was, I guess, writing and art. It was kind of like exploring that space um where I would have like imaginary friends, right? And interact with them. I guess it's to somehow compensate for that quote unquote loneliness of growing up alone. But it was also an opportunity to like parang just like dive into all of these magical worlds that I created, whether that be like a steampunk fantasy thing, right? Or what did I used to write when I was a kid? I loved mermaids. So I would imagine that I
Mm,
was a mermaid because I really loved The Little Mermaid and Ariel. I also loved Super Mario, so I wrote a lot of video game fanfics for some reason, and a lot of self-insert things. I did make a lot of comics when I was a kid, and it had to do with like Avatar. So basically, all those pop culture. Yes, I was an Avatar kid. All those pop culture things where I wanted to kind of like be in the world of that cartoon or that manga or that movie. Star Wars was also a big thing for me growing up. Um, yeah, so that's what I did, and eventually over time, from wanting to be in different cartoon and anime worlds, I wanted to try to create my own, right? So that's where I tried to find my voice as an author. Of course, at a very young age, I don't think people have that notion of finding your own voice as an author yet, right? Like it's something that comes with age and like I guess branding wise, diba? When you start thinking of yourself as a writer, like what is my niche, what is my genre? But back then I just really wanted to have fun and explore. I used to write on stationary pads and doctor's prescription pads, anything that I
wow.
could get my hands on. I even got to the point now I would staple pieces of bond paper together and create fictional magazines. I love making fictional magazines that even had like table of contents and then all of these ads. So I figured out when I was a kid pa lang, I was already interested in advertising because I was making a lot of these fictional brand ads like scooters and islands and tourism ads to fictional world. So that was my kind of setup growing up, and I think that really influenced me in my writing.
Can you remember the spark, the first time you ever thought I need to do this? Were you
Like
was
as
it a
as
specific,
right?
yeah. No, no, just as a writer, like
Mhm.
the first time you picked up a pen and decided that you were going to either make a comic or you're going to make a magazine or you're going to write a story. Can you remember the first time? Do you remember what fictional work you were consuming? You can really tell what industry we're in. So with that
But like
sparked it.
even if it was like a TV series or something like that, like what
Yes.
influenced me? The Land Before Time, The Land Before Time, and Fern Gully.
My
Yes,
goodness, both of those are older than you.
I know. You'd say I was an old soul or something like that. Yeah, pero I'm batang 90s. I was a 90s kid. Um, I hope that was still there. I think it was on VHS or something.
Mm-mm.
The Little Mermaid also and Powerpuff Girls. Ayan, Powerpuff Girls and Pokemon. Those are the big
Mm.
five. Powerpuff Girls, Pokemon, um, Kim Possible, Martin Mystery, Totally Spies. Yeah, all of the Disney classics of the early 2000s, I
Can
would
I
say.
just say, I notice in your age group, Kim Possible is a big thing. Obviously it's after my time and I completely missed it. Like, can you explain that to me? What is it about Kim Possible? What is that makes it that puts it above so many of the cartoons that were coming out at the time?
I think, is it related to time slot? talking in talking in media terms, as we should.
At the time, perhaps it mattered.
Yeah, I think that was the time because it was like snack time or merienda time as we would call it. These were the shows that were readily available after school or before school. So those were the things that I would always catch. I remember specifically what I would watch every day before going to school at 6 o'clock while I was changing into my uniform and eating my breakfast that was like hot dog and rice. Yung mga ganon.
Yeah.
Yung tipong ganon. Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. That
Mhm.
was it. That was what I watched. I think Kim Possible had this allure talaga. Like what made her so alluring was that it was like she was a normal student with like a secret life. So it was like we would project that. We would project that in school. Like we'd
Of
have
course.
like these secret clubs where we would do, you know what, I was such a nerd, I was such a dork talaga that we had this Harry Potter club where we actually played Quidditch in our school field. So we would steal the brooms from the closet of like the cleaning ladies, right? Like
Hmm.
each classroom had that. And there was this gigantic Nara tree in our field. We got the hula hoop from like the PE section, and then we stick the hula hoop into like the branches of the trees. So ang daming hula hoops there. And then we get like a volleyball and use that as like the quaffle. And then the best part, we were so ingenious with this. The best part was like the golden snitch. Guess what we would do for the golden snitch?
I don't know. What did you
Okay, we get a 5 peso coin. Everyone closes their eyes, and then we randomly like throw it into the field. And then and then the purpose of like the seeker is to find that 5 peso coin in
That
the middle
very
of
specific 5 peso coin in the middle
the
of a
coin in
field.
the middle of this field with like talahib, as in like long grass.
Very high grass. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was really like my fun childhood growing up in the world of the imaginary.
When you started writing, like, picking up a pen and writing, what were you channeling? What were you being influenced by? Like, or were you consciously copying, maybe?
Mm. Secret societies. Like I said, Kim Possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Had her Kids Next Door was also like a big thing for me. Like it always had to do with secret organizations because like my first few stories were about like super spy kids, right? Or like the secret witch society in daily life or something like that. And then we would create actual groups in school where we would pretend to be part of these societies and have these mini events during like lunch or dismissal time while waiting for our sundo or the people that would pick us up. So those were lots of the themes of those kinds of media that I consumed, and the stories that I wrote had to do with characters living secret lives or carrying big secrets and stuff like that. So it's like magic in the ordinary. That was like the kind of theme that I played around with a lot.
What about things like structure or dialogue? Did you pick that up from anything?
Mm, like drawing wise, I remember my biggest influence was still Avatar. Like even the way that I draw now, the eyes are still very, very
Avatar.
Avatar animated of the facial structures. I think kasi in grade four, when I was in grade four, that was the time that everyone started exploring. I think that was the time that Full Metal Alchemist really became a thing. Um, so everyone was like exploring anime art, um, really picking up cues from manga and anime and I guess the Western shows like the early 2000 shows. Um, I would say I am most influenced by the storytelling of Avatar and Full Metal Alchemist and like shonen, the kind of shonen arcs rather than shoujo. Yeah.
Okay. Before we go on to your professional work, I'm going to ask you, are you Katang or Zutara?
Zutara, hardcore. I will
Zutara.
sync I will sync with the Zutara ship. Like until now, I don't recognize Kataga's canon. They're just everyone's just imaginary. Just kidding. Yeah, but respect to the creators for making Katang like the end game. But in my head, it's still Zutara
Yeah,
because the
when
tension.
yeah, when they do the live action show, I know one thing I want them to change, and it's Zutara forever.
Especially that scene, like that scene where um they were bloodbending, right? And
Mm-mm.
then Katara had that choice to kill that person, and she decided not to. And then she has this breakdown, and then Zuko's like, "Okay, I'm just gonna hug you." Like that was like the pinnacle of it, or the one where he sacrifices himself, like getting shot with Azula's
Lightning.
lightning, break the Agnikai. That was it. That was like, oh my gosh, I cried. I cried so hard. I bawled so hard in that scene. But yeah, that kind of storytelling that is kind of like epic, episodic group of friends trying to change the world. A lot of world building. I love world building. It's such a big thing for me. And humane humane approaches towards narratives and storytellings, and really delving into like parang the inner thoughts and desires of the character to propel the plot forward is like something that I put focus on. Yes.
Let's move into your professional career, Kat. You wrote your first novel when you were what age?
Um, I started when I was 13, and then I finished it when I was 20. So it started out with I have my props ready. Here we go. This is the first one. So this is my first book, Skies Above. So it's currently not in print. We can delve into that later about the business of self-publishing books and producing every single book out of your own pocket money. We can talk about that later. But currently, Skies Above is not in print, but I'm super proud of it as my first book. It started out as a creative writing project when I was in high school. Tapos my tita, her name's Auntie Claire. She actually passed away because of breast cancer back in 2010. But like I have an ode. I loved her. I have an ode to her. Like for every character that I always have in every story, there has to be like a Claire or a Clara, and that's where Tita Clara came from, because from Tablay, because she was also a professor. So
Mhm.
she's the one that really pushed me to creative writing. So she really wanted me to publish this book. So I started it in 2013 as a creative writing project. I didn't really take it seriously. You write it on and off until I finally became serious about it, mga 2015. And then that's when I really revisited the manuscript. That's when I really like wrote the pages and then got down to this. It was kind of like jumping out of a plane while learning how to make a parachute on the way down. If
From
that
the
makes sense.
skies above.
Yes, from the skies above. Not knowing if maglaland ka sa earth or like in hell sort of thing. So yeah, that was my experience.
What is skies above about?
Skies Above is a steampunk fantasy that takes place in the floating world of Estario. So it's a very Western fantasy, I would say. Like it was really based on the Western stuff that I would watch, like Lord of the Rings. I love that.
Mhm.
Steampunk things, 80 Days Around the World, diba? Like all those, and then all of these fantasy RPG influences, like Final Fantasy. Then I'm a gamer. I love Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 12, which is the dark horse of the Final Fantasy series, is actually my favorite. Um, it took a lot of inspiration from that. Actually, it started with a dream I had, with a dream of this singular red balloon, of this singular red balloon, floating through the clouds at an impossibly fast speed. So I kind of I kind of built up on that idea. I built the world of Skies Above, and it tells a story of this young man. His name is Keith Asro. So he's stuck in this hard place between the sky pirate. There's sky pirates. There's sky pirates, and there's also a military that's kind of like fighting over this coveted source of power called the Godstone because it controls their world's gravity. So, however, the Godstone is actually inside of him, inside of Keith. So, so they have to unravel the mystery of the Godstone before their world literally like falls apart. So there's a lot of high swashbuckling adventure in the high skies, but it also talks about like freedom of choice and seeking the truth and the triumph of the human spirit. So these were very lofty ideas that I kind of picked up from my education. Did like I studied a lot of philosophy and humanities in college, so I wanted to kind of like seep in or react to all of those kinds of things when I was writing the book. So yeah, it's a perfect match of my love for Western steampunk fantasy and also my own personal life. So that was it.
Where does Skies Above take place?
It's a floating world. It's the floating world of Estario. So it's this world that I completely imagined. So there, I love like making maps and drawing that. So I drew
That's
this.
only
Yeah,
right. It's only
uh,
right.
yeah.
That's awesome. Why is it out of print?
Ah, because I'm focusing on printing Tablay because it's the more, it's my cash cow for now.
So let's get
So
to that one.
okay,
Okay,
we
so
should move on.
Tablay. I think it's fair to say that this is what most people know you for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have read Tablay, but for those who haven't, can you give us your elevator pitch for it? You should be good at this.
Okay. So, Tablay, you guys should imagine Filipino mythology mixed with futuristic mecha. This is the brave new world of Tablay. So it actually takes place in Manila, 136 years into the future, where a 100-year war rages on between the mech force and mechanical machine life called aswangs. So the aswangs are actually based off, I don't know if you can see the tikbalang there, but
Yeah, we
the aswangs are actually based off our Filipino mythological creatures. So imagine mechanized versions of like the tikbalang, the tiktik, the capre, the nuno. Yeah, it's not only about mythology though. Like it's a relevant tale of, I guess, there's a lot of commentary din about what the Philippines also currently like experiencing. So it follows the story of mech pilot Anya Valerio, who's like a rising star in the mech force, and she also wants to kind of like avenge her father in a sense, because her father never fully came back from the battlefield because apparently he was like paralyzed and in a vegetative state, right? So she kind of wants to like prove herself. She wants to avenge her father, but at the same time, when this terrible secret about the war is like unraveled about the enemy, about the aswang, she suddenly second guesses everything that she's wanted and known. So it's up to her now, and her partner, the reserved but brilliant engineer Shin Jose, to stop the creation of this mega weapon called the Bakunawa. So Bakunawa is one of our moon eating creatures, one of the biggest creatures in Philippine mythology, one of the strongest creatures. They have to stop the creation of this mega weapon called Bakunawa before the consequences are irreversible. So, for those of you who don't know, Tablay is actually Filipino for electric charge. It's a thematic visual that cuts across a lot of our visuals, our decorations in the book. The theme of electricity being so powerful, being that binding force, the electricity between people, the lifeblood of the city. It's all surrounded by power, electricity, and energy, and that's what I really wanted to encapsulate in Tablay. But most of all, it's an inspection. It inspects the relationship of technology with humanity. It asks the question, what good is progress if humanity is left behind? And it also tells us that history might have dictated the present, but the future is what we decided to be. So that's the elevator pitch.
I have so many questions, so I'm gonna start about Tablay. So I'm gonna start with
Okay.
this one. 136 is a very specific number. Why did you decide on 136?
Dinarts ko lang. Parang, sometimes you think too hard about things, and then there's a point where you stop caring, and it's like, what's the most random number I can think of? 136. Yeah, let's see.
Moving from the fictional world of Asterios to the future of the Philippines.
Yeah.
That is a huge move. Now all of a sudden you're talking about, as we know, sci-fi, despite the fact that it takes place in the future, is actually a way to talk about the present.
Yes.
So now that you've said it in the Philippines, was there something in between those two books that, like, let's say uh maybe kickstarted your desire to say something about the country?
Yes. Um, I really wanted to write something Filipino, right? But I never really had the push to do so. I mean, in between Tablay and in between Skies Above, or the other way around, in between Skies Above and Tablay, that's when I joined the comics community. And that's what really shifted my perspective on writing. I sort of had this paradigm shift na parang, how come I'm writing all of these beautiful Western inspired worlds where when I could actually just look into my own country, diba? Lean into my own culture and produce something beautiful. And I feel like everyone that I've met in that comics community, I guess, really inspired me to create my own tale based on our roots, based on our traditions and our culture. I think that we have such a rich playground, diba, when it comes to writing about Philippine culture, Philippine mythology, which is so untapped. I mean, in a global scale, diba, we have a lot of people writing here locally. But for the world to see us, for the world to see Philippine literature, is something that still has to be done. Like there's so many steps that we have to take. There are so many steps, including like breaking our own notions about our own literature, which we can probably talk about later after we talk about the Tablay. Um, that's when I thought, wow, I'm so inspired by these other people in the comics industry that I want to make my own book, but I want to make it something different. There's a part of me in my brain that kind of ticks then as a marketer or as an advertiser, which probably we're going to talk about then later. Na what can I do to separate myself, or parang like as branding wise, what should I do or where should I go to really set up my credentials as an author? Well, that some part of me was thinking that way, right? As every
Yeah.
aspiring best-selling author should. So I was thinking, I love sci-fi, but I've never really seen sci-fi na Filipino. There have been some books, yes, but like something that really champions real, hard, practical science fiction. But what if we mix that with our deep, rich, beautiful culture? I think that's like a winning equation that no one has really cracked yet. So this was me thinking, I'm looking back at the past, I'm seeing the possibilities of the future, and I'm finding the sweet spot in the middle. And
Yeah.
with that kind of thinking, I started dissecting. Like, I'm a very logical person. I'm a very pragmatic person and writer, which you can probably see. And a lot of people have given me feedback on. Parang, and some people are like, ano ba to? Masyadong straightforward naman. Wala masyadong laro yung, you know, Filipinos with imaginary haters. But of course, everyone's not going to like your work talaga. Like out of 100 people, probably 20 people will only really appreciate it. Just focus on the people that do, you know. Don't really mind the haters unless of course they have constructive criticism, which is valid, which can help you develop the story in the future, and which is what I did with the graphic novel. But it was like this was an opportunity for me to play in the arena that I know I was good in because I loved sci-fi. I'm a very technical, logical person, but I also have the capability to tell a good story, so I took it on as a challenge, right?
Yeah.
Um, what I did first was really just build build the world of Tablay, which took around 9 months. So that was 9 months of it, intense research um, into war history. Gusto kong ilayo kasi yung Tablay. Sorry, let me say that in English again. I wanted to differentiate Tablay from other science fiction. So I did not study the science fiction meta. I looked towards actual World War I and World War II stories. And that's where I
Mm-hmm.
took. I did the conscious effort not to watch too many science fiction things while writing it. So hopefully that kind of offset it from the usual track to have its own kind of personality and whatnot. Yeah.
It did. Before we move on, you mentioned people who inspired you in the comics community. So let's take this opportunity to give people a boost. Can you name some names?
Yes. First of all, Sir Budget Tan, let's go. Tresse, like you have that at the back of your wall. I think that was really the gateway. That was really the gateway for me to be more interested in the comics community. Who's one of my first idols? Apple Santa Maria, so ubiquitous. He was actually my first friend in the agency, and he became my creative director and eventual partner sa work, which was so interesting. So he also opened my eyes to um a lot of a lot of other creators. Sir Jerry with Elmer, diba? That was a
Mm-hmm.
comic that I literally cried. I don't know why I was crying over a chicken, pero umiyak ako. Um, Ian, Ian, Sir Ian na naging Ian na naging collaborator ko for Makina. Um, and Kajo and even if I were to like name the smaller, well, not smaller creators, but the ones who are more local rather than the international scene. So we have
Yeah.
also the cool artists, um, Bambi and Olan, but they're not exactly local because they have Diwata Comics, diba? They
Yes.
also they also handle a lot of manga from the US. Jay, Ignacio, Mang Alex, right? So there are so many brilliant creators, and even if they're not what you call famous, even if they're just I find them on Twitter, ang galing ng mga works nila, 'di ba? I mean the internet has democratized this sort of community so much that it just takes you one big one hit wonder to make you famous, like on Wattpad or on like Webtoon, which really shifted the kind of parang yung publishing system is so different. The publishing landscape is so different than it was like probably 5 or 10 years ago, thanks to technology. And that's what made people find Tablay.
What
Um, yes,
what do you think it is that makes us continue to go back, like all of the ones you mentioned, no? So like Trece, Ian's work with Skyworld and Salamanca, and even somebody you didn't name, Arnold Are with the mythology class, like
yes, yes.
all
Arnold.
of what do you think it is that makes us continue to go back to Philippine mythology, like as a
Yeah,
because as a percentage of stories out of the total stories, it's not like American works have the same percentage of mythology in them that we
I,
do.
I think it's really or it's something we can hold on to. Yung pinaghahawakan talaga ng mga Pinoy. Gets mo? Parang it's like part of our DNA that we feel is this is just my take. It's like part of us that it's that fantasy or that mythology or fatalism element ng mga Pinoy talaga. This is the we feel that mythology is the rich ground that we can explore because even if we know that there's a kapre, there's a tikbalang, there's a tiktik, there's a nuno, the big five or whatever, the big ten, there are so many ways that you can tackle it, right? There's so many ways that you can mix it up. There are so many lenses from different regional cultures that you can look at it from, diba? Like how we say that the tikbalang of the Tagalogs may not be the same way that the Visayans, 'di ba, would represent the tikbalang or the people from the north, 'di ba? So the the bench is a deep bench. It's a deep well that people can like, it's kind, I would say it's kind of like a gold rush din now when people make comics. Parang the first instinct is to have mythology on board because it's something that makes us so Filipino.
Yeah.
It's something that's so embedded in our cultural milieu. But at the same time, there's also that other side of the coin, right? The other side of the discussion. Parang, ay, masyado ng gas-gas. Di ba? Parang Philippine mythology again, right? So it really depends on how the readers or how the readers take it or how you do it as an author. I think for as long as you put your own interpretation and spin your own magic to it, hindi siya magiging gasgas. It will not be like oversold. Okay, okay. Case in point, Japan.
Yeah.
There are so many demon hunter animes, manga, yokai. Think about it. Bleach, Jujutsu Kaisen, 'di ba? Um, what else? There's so many Demon
Demon
Slayer, oh, 'di
Slayer.
ba?
Yeah.
So just think of how many times the concept of demon slaying was used. Pero hindi naman gasgas. Even Attack on Titan basically is demon slaying. But they were always reevaluated or reshaped with different lenses because of these different artists' perspective, upbringing, influences in art and culture and different media that they consume. So for as long as, like I said, for as long as your interpretation of it is like also respectful to the source, of course, if ever you're tackling Philippine mythology, like as long as there's no perversion
Mm-hmm.
towards the subject, as long as it was treated with respect, but at the same time, as long as we put our own spin to it, add different elements, mix in whatever's in your writing soul, I guess, it won't be it won't be a red ocean. It's still a blue ocean. It's
I
still a blue.
think that's what you did with Tablay that makes it so unique is you mix together mythology with technology, which now I have to ask this question because I've seen that happen before, Kat, in a video game we both love. And that video game is called Horizon Zero Dawn. So I was wondering if that was any influence at all on Tablay, if you were thinking about that at all.
the only the only influence that it really shared with is that that was one of our references for the tikbala, the
Hmm.
charger. That's where I got the that's where I so when I teamed up with Paul, so I was looking for an artist to kind of render the swangs, right?
Yeah.
So one of the references for the tikbalang was the charger. Aside from that, I wasn't really I was probably just 5 to 10% in the game, into the game when I started pre-writing for Tablay. So hindi naman siya nagka-intersect that much. But what were the other inspirations for that? Evangelion. That was the exception to the rule. When I said I didn't watch manga or anime, I didn't read manga or anime for it. I did watch Evangelion because I was so interested in the I'm so interested in the psychological aspects of war.
Yeah.
I do have a lot of reference books that talk about, I always tell this to people, like more than the plot, what's interesting to see are like the gears turning in their head. What do the characters think? The scene, the very pivotal scene in the book, which I will not explain, was actually inspired by our. So pumunta ako sa Cubao Expo. And for some reason, I went to like I went to this old book vintage bookstore, and I saw a couple of books that did not have a cover. Like it was really old and crusty. And then when I opened them, they were actually memoirs from the First and Second World War. One of the stories that I picked up was the story of this bomber pilot that fell from 10,000 feet without a parachute. and survived. And in that memoir, he was talking about how when you're about to die, your whole life doesn't like flash before you, parang movie. Parang you only think about like your mom and your dad, and you think about, will my parents even know that I'm gone or missing, or will they even miss me? Will my friends even miss me? And then suddenly you start to feel so lonely. Parang even if you scream, no one's gonna hear you, and parang the only thing that you feel before you die is like extreme loneliness. So that's what I took inspiration from for that pivotal scene in Tablay to really harp or melt the emotions out of it. So yeah, and so just to give you a sample of different stories like
Yeah.
Operation, there were a lot of fun operations, and reading books about the actual warplanes, taking notes of that. That's how I developed the labels here for the mechs, like the manufacturer, power plant, takeoff weight, maximum speed, cruising speed, service ceiling. So I studied so many documents for 9 months just building the world of Tablay. That's how anal I am about like information and world building. Yeah.
So tell me about the graphic novel. So you're going to release Tablay as a graphic novel.
Yes, we are. There's the
Um,
poster there. Yeah.
what led to that? To you deciding to make it a graphic novel, or what led to you, picking Paul to draw it? And when can we see it come out, Kat?
Okay. I've always wanted to make a Tablaya comic first. I always like, they were like, as Nolan intended, diba? Or as Tolkien intended, I remember, like as Olan intended. It was supposed to be like I really wanted it to be a comic, but I didn't really know anyone back then. I really didn't have the time or effort to like partner with someone. So I knew that as if it were a novel, then I'm the only one who could control the speed of production, meaning I didn't have to rely on anyone. And that's what I wanted at that time. But then as more beautiful comics started to pop up, that's when I really got the itch. The itch I could not scratch. I mean, I was scratching it, but I was still itchy, right? So it had to be a graphic novel one day. I remember at the book launch of Tablay, I showed everyone parang keynote address. It felt like a keynote address of Steve Jobs. It was this whole list. Hashtag the blind novel. And I told the audience, why is it hashtag the blind novel? It's because I'm already anticipating hashtag the blind comics, hashtag the blind movie, hashtag the blind games, hashtag the blind on Netflix. So I was already projecting like years into the future because I had the vision for it. And all I knew is that once the book was out, once it lived its lifespan, I would move on to the next great thing, which was to create the comic book. And hopefully, fingers crossed, if the graphic novel works, then now it's time to move on to the movie. So parang MCU part 1, 2, 3, 4 in phasing. But I'm a burnt out girly. I don't even know if I'm gonna get it past the graphic novel at this point because so many other babies just kind of popped up unwillingly. So
Let's
yeah.
talk about that, because like just the fact that you thought about what hashtags there should be, right? I've told you this in private. I think that of all of the creators right now, locally, you are one of the best at marketing yourself. And a huge part of that is, of course, the fact that you work as a marketer in your real life. But like, what tips and advice can you give to people? Because a lot of our friends in the comics industry, they're very, as great as they are, they're very humble, right? They're very, some of them are self-deprecating even. They're not too comfortable selling themselves. So what tips do you have that can let people like be able to put themselves out there and help themselves market themselves?
Fake it till you make it.
That's
I'm so sorry,
true.
but that works. You know how many times I had to pretend like I knew things to be able to like I drink and I know things. It's like my guiding principle in life. People I think kasi Filipino culture is very based on hiya, 'di ba? Shame,
Mhm.
'di ba? It's on like oh my god, what is that word in English? Um, It's being united and not fighting with each other, unity, harmony, right? We're all about that. I think kasi if your goal, kasi everyone has a different goal, right? Some people they're happy now with creating kasi they find fulfillment in the mere fact that they created a beautiful thing. Other people have an aspiration for, I guess, being known, 'di ba? Or having a reputation based off that sort of work that you have. At first talaga, I never even wrote the blind skies above for anyone but myself. It was actually such a selfish goal that I just wanted I just needed I
You
just
needed it
needed
to
an
exist.
I needed an escape from my harsh reality. So I created a self-insert fanfics. I created self-insert fanfics in imaginary worlds I created to kind of like explain the hardship that I was going through at that time. I feel like I feel like to be able to put yourself out there, you need to be brave. Sometimes it takes an insane amount of bravery. 20 seconds of courage. I live by that rule. It's from that movie. I think we what was that movie? Um about a zoo. Basically the guy said that sometimes all it takes is 20 seconds of insane courage for you to change your life. And and that's what I've been doing. I've been having like 20 seconds of insane courage for like the past 6 years nonstop. Um because either I'm just like I'm crazy for doing it, but sometimes my crazy kind of pays off. Like I said, sometimes I don't even think I'm very rash. Sometimes I say yes to things even if I don't know to do how to do them, and it's just like up to my spirit to do it on the way there. Like for example, in Pen Lab, shout out to Rexy. Fun fact, I didn't even know how to write or make a webtoon, and I said yes. I said yes to them, and the day after I said yes, I started watching all these YouTube tutorials on how to do it. So that's how crazy I am sometimes. But I think it also comes from a place of knowing who you are and knowing your work. I
Yeah.
remember I remember when I went to Google for the Google Creative Campus. So long story short, I was one of the representatives or students chosen to participate at the Google Creative Campus there at the Googleplex in Silicon Valley. And we learned a lot from the top tech gurus and marketers of Google and their magic equation towards selling yourself, selling your brand, selling anything is know the magic, know the user, and connect the two. Know the magic. What is your book about? It's the simplest question, but if you can't answer that like straight, you won't be able to sell well. That's why when they ask me, what is Tablay about? They're like, what is Skies Above about? In 2 to 3 sentences, dapat masagot mo or like you have a clear idea about what's your book about, what are the strengths of the book, what makes it different from the different books in the category or or what comps when you say comps, right, what are the few nearest references that can describe your story. For example, tablay is Pacific Rim times 13. Get so oh
Mm.
magigets agad. So knowing the magic of your work, and then the second piece of the pie is knowing know the magic, know the user. Knowing the user is who are your readers, right? And basic marketing. Where are they? Who are they? What do they love? What do they fear? How does a typical day in their life go? Right? Are they on social media? What social media platforms are they on? What time in the morning do they wake up? Do they commute? What songs do they listen to? What are their sentiments towards these certain topics or things? And then once you know these two things, the magic is like bringing them together. I knew that Tablay was a Filipino science fiction story. I knew that my market were definitely like the pop culture geeks, right? Basically us. My market was us. How do I reach them? How do I connect them? And that's where the super interesting part comes. I marvel at this every single time because it's like whenever people talk about comics, for some reason Tablay gets bunched in it, right? If you've noticed, like when people put their like hauls or spreads, my Pinoy comics or my Pinoy superhero collection. Nakikita ko yung Tablay. It's so weird. Like or like when it's Comic Con, or let's say Tablay would somehow be bunched into that, or Comic Con, it's because the only reason that happened was because I made the decision to put my prose novels, to put my fiction novels into a comic book market, into an anime convention market, which is crazy because why would you sell a fiction book in a place that sells merch and stickers and t-shirts and
Because
whatever.
those are the people.
Yeah, because those are the people.
Because those are the
And
people.
that was for me strategically, intellectually, logically as a marketer. That was my closest way from point A to point B without having to pass through a middleman. Because if I had to pass through a middleman, Fully Booked and National Bookstore would take 40% of my cut, which is like even more than it takes to produce a single copy of the book production wise. So what was what was another factor for the strange success of the Bly is that it launched 2 months before the pandemic hit and then the world closed.
Ah. Well, you can't
So it
predict that part as a marketer.
yeah, yeah. So it was like, oh shit, I just launched a book and then no one can even go to events, right? No one can even touch each other. No one can go near each other. It felt like the end of the world. And it was the end of the world for so many people because so many people died also.
It's the end of the
Um,
world as we knew it.
yeah, it was
The
the
world
end
is
of the world.
different now.
Yeah. Parang nag-reset talaga yung mundo. Um, I was like, obviously I wanted to also share my book kasi sayang naman all the effort and all the years that I took making it only for the lifeblood to be cut sa mga events, sa mga ganon. I was crazy. I was crazy again. I was insane again to just literally cold call to literally cold call any bookstagrammer and book Twitter and Facebook group that I knew. I literally sent them PMs. Just parang I was just like I didn't want to hit the high high follower yung mga 100,000 kasi syempre you need to pay them for that, di ba?
Yeah.
Like it's so expensive. Wala nga akong pera. Like it was really hard economically din for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Especially during the pandemic. And people had to find ways to create, 'di ba? To create more sources of income, 'di ba? Ang daming tao nag dalgona coffee, ube cheese pandesal, 'di ba? So many people started food businesses, so many people started live selling. It became like a race for survival in terms of how to like pivot from that. And that was also me selling the books then. Um what I did was I searched, I did my own research to find micro influencers, 20 of them, 20 micro influencers who had a following of at least 1 to 2,000, a sizable following, but not too much na it's going to be cluttered with the rest of their posts. I remember sending them cold calls or cold messages on Instagram saying, "Hi, my name is Katrina Olan and I'm an independent author. I just started this book called Tablay. Um I don't have money to pay you right now, but I would be super happy to give you a free or complimentary copy of the book for an honest review." So a lot of people denied it because syempre they wanted the cash. But a lot of people, yung mga startup book bloggers, they were so happy to accept it. So sige, send it over. Mag-send over ka ng copy. So I started off with 5, na naging 10, and then I was like, okay, let's see how it goes. Let's wait. I was so shocked that the book from one book blogger, uh, it was such a joy to just see them making book reviews, diba? Yung mga videos, reactions. It exploded. It took off. Like after one girl posted her live book review on my, because I'm the one that handles, like I'm a really hands-on person talaga. So I handle all the order forms. I didn't have a Shopee then. I didn't have a bookstore partners. I just made a simple Google order form na parang name, address, number of copies. I would physically risk my life to go to LBC and line up with everyone in nakamask just to like ship copies, singular copies of Tablays to random people that I didn't even know across the Philippines to make reviews for the book. Tapos ang saya na parang after someone reviewed, 5 orders came in kaagad just right after they watched the video, and then chuk, 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 the network just started exploding na bigla there became like a book tour na, oh, I'm the head of the Luzon book club, Ma'am Kat. I would be so happy to host, or like, oh, I saw this on Instagram and I would love to interview you. So parang it really just it blossomed. It popped like rabbits all around, and wow, parang I can't believe until this day that that actually happened because it was so crazy, it was so unreal, and it happened during the pandemic, and I guess the rest I guess speaks for itself. Where to is now, and it opened up so much opportunities for other books. I noticed that in my talk in the Philippine Book Festival, parang a lot of people were saying that they're so afraid to sell their work because they don't believe that they're good enough, right? And I think parang the first thing that you have to do talaga is believe in yourself and believe in your work. Even if that's lying to yourself, diba? Sometimes that, oh, I'm maybe I'm not that crappy. And then you keep on telling yourself that, and then you start believing that you're actually good, and then you become good. I think that's a flip side of the coin for fake it till you make it. um I think parang what there is to pick up from the industry or the comics community, parang we've put an imagined ceiling on ourselves, right? Parang um this comic is only good for like a one-off, right? Like,
Mhm.
basta mag-sell yan, basta okay lang kung 2 tao lang yung bumili ng comics ko. Di ba? Yung parang, and then that kind of, I guess that kind of mentality when we don't believe in ourselves as much, or parang we belittle our own work, also puts a ceiling to the kind of quality that we can produce. But if we kind of shoot high, if we dream high and aim and have like this sort of guiding principle or vision, even if it's just like one day I'm gonna have a Netflix series, di ba? Baka who knows? Baka Budget said that one day when he was like little budget, right?
Well,
Little
he didn't
budget
think of
films.
Netflix kasi wala pa Netflix nun. Pero
All right.
but yes, 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 the point is made.
Um, as long as parang dream big and dream high, and don't just think it's for a one-off comics thing, di ba? Imagine it, imagine and manifest it, right? Imagine it and materialize it. Kasi I believe, even before Tablay was starting, I believed that there was going to be Tablay novel. I believed that there was going to be Tablay comics. I even intentionally chose the mythological creatures because I envisioned that those 5 creatures are the most representative of Philippine culture, so that when other nationalities would read Tablay, they could easily be seeped into Philippine culture and be interested, which did happen. Like when the Amazon Kindle book took off, na-surprise ako na there were some readers from UK, there were some from Israel. It was so interesting. I was like, whoa, an Israeli reader. That's so cool. He was reading it during their, is that Yom
Yom
Kippur? Parang
Yom Kippur.
Yeah, Yom Kippur. Yeah, that one. Thank you. So that was his reading for that week. So interesting na parang there's so many things happening that they got to appreciate Philippine culture then, and they started to look for more Filipino books. They messaged me like, "Hey, I really enjoyed the Tablay and Philippine mythology. Could you recommend me any other?" Siyempre, 13, di ba? Siyempre, mythology class, Sky World, yung mga ganun. And then just it opens up you, you the creator, imagining your work set for the world stage will ultimately push you to become a better creator, better quality, because you believe the world is watching. And when you believe the world is watching, you're going to create world class content. And that's the only way for us to create world class content is for you to envision it, for you to materialize it, and for it to actually happen. So those are the three steps, I think. And thankfully and hopefully 2025 Frankfurt Book Fair, diba? We're the guest of
Mm,
honor. That
that's
is,
awesome.
I'm saying it right now, Duy. I hope to materialize me going to Germany, to Frankfurt in 2025. I'm claiming it now. So 2 years from now,
On the
we're gonna
record. On the record. It's on the
we're
record
gonna
right
watch,
now.
we're gonna watch this video, and we're gonna look back, and I'm gonna buy you a beer, and we're just gonna watch the recording of this. Right?
Sige.
Yeah.
A huge part of marketing, of course, is finding your niche and sticking to that niche. So, when you did our next 7 weeks for Pen Lab, which is in the Philippines is equivalent of a webtoon, which is a it's a romance. You took on a pen name. Is that
Yes,
intentional?
it was intentional.
But people still know it's you, Kat.
They didn't know before. Okay, first of all, I wanted to have this mysterious like secret persona. But my big ass mouth can't keep a secret, right? I failed at being the mysterious tita. Okay? So
So we were not supposed to know it was you.
we were not supposed to know. But long story short, I had a pen name because I was dating someone at that time. And I didn't want that person to know
That you
that
were
story.
writing this story.
Yes.
Oh, is this story autobiographical?
Secret.
Okay,
so
fine.
so um so when we broke up, I didn't feel the need to hide myself anymore. So I outed it. Yeah.
Okay.
But of course, we're still on good terms. We're still friends. But at that time, I didn't want to risk anything like jeopardizing the relationship. But because I mean, the story is neutral. It's not like it hurts anyone. It's a story about two best friends falling in love and figuring out their feelings for each other. So it was that space
I
that was
know
working.
every single viewer right now wants me to probe into that particular story. I will not, people. I have manners. Oh,
Yeah.
our
But
next 7 weeks. Yeah, go on.
yeah, our next 7 weeks it's a story about choices. It's not a love story, but it's a story of love, if that makes sense. I said there's so many aspects to it that reflect that reflect different kinds of love. There's love, romantic love between JP and Nana. Um, there's love for family, which you will eventually see between Nana, especially with her dad. There's friendship, there's love in friendship because there are friends supporting you on the journey, friends who also tell you no, that's not the right thing you should do. I think you're an asshole for doing that. They just got to speak to you the truth. There's also love for yourself. It's about knowing when you've given enough to the relationship and when you're sacrificing yourself just because of it. And there's love, there's consideration, which I think is the highest form of love. It's knowing what you should do because you love that person, even if that means breaking up. So those are things that you will explore in our next 7 weeks.
So our next 7 weeks has 10 episodes out now on PenLab. It is an app where you can go to it on your browser, penlab.inc. And it will return in, when will it return?
Soon, probably within a month. Yeah.
So it will return sometime in October or November. October and November, the proper time to do a love story. Anyway, okay,
So scary. Naging
let's
horror.
let's move on to this book.
Ah, Makina. Yup, I have it also. Yeah.
So, Machina, your collaboration with the great Ian Santamaria.
Yes.
There is a picture of the two of you shaking hands at the summit office, signing the deal.
Uh-huh.
Okay, Ian is inarguably one of the best artists of the Philippines. When you got tapped to work with Ian, how did it feel?
I had this humongous case of imposter syndrome. Parang I was like, oh shit, am I even good enough to like do this? Well, this is me on a daily basis, but it's Ian, right? Ian's like a art god. And then here I am, just a little girl with a little story. um, but I didn't say no. I didn't say no because I would miss out on the chance of a lifetime
I get the
working with.
feeling you don't say no a lot in general to opportunities.
Yes.
Okay.
No. Wait, what's the wait? No, say opportunities. Yes. I don't say no to opportunities. And that's why I'm a burnt out girly. Okay, so um, yeah, I'm taking a break by the way for the rest of the year after this because I just want to focus on my recovery, my mental health, and my cousin's getting married at the end of the year, so I'm planning for that and for all the balikbayans to come back. So
And of
that's
course,
what
your
we have.
actual job, right?
Yes, yes, my actual job. I kind of forgot about that part. Okay, so working with Ian, grabe, like when I was approached by Summit Books, it was first Leo. Okay, like I said, everything, the dots all connect looking back. You can never see the dots connecting forward. You can only see the dots connecting back. And looking back at it was so auspicious for like Tablay to like pave the way to Makina. And it was just the mere chance that one of the book clubs, diba I said kanina that there were so many book clubs that tried to approach me and I kept on saying yes to them and I kept on appearing on all of these book clubs just to answer all their questions. But one of the book clubs was the Sealit Circle. And one of the members of the Sealit Circle was the editor-in-chief of Summit Books. And while Sealit didn't give me the best reviews for Tablay, they were my hardest audience to be honest. Like they were giving me a lot of constructive criticism. Hindi naman basher, but they were hard. They were hard on the book, which kind of like they were kind of like it pushed me to like want to make that remastered story with the graphic novel. One of the members there was the editor in chief of Summit Books, and Leo actually came back to me 2 years after that 2 years after that book review. And he was like, "Hey Kat, are you interested working with Ian Santa Maria?" And I was like, "What?" As in Ian, as in the Ian Santa Maria? And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, yeah." What a huge part of me, this me, like outside. And then me inside was like,
Like, holy shit!
yeah. It's like holy shit when we closed the Zoom call. I was like, oh shit. Totoo ba to? Parang, is this real? And then, yeah, yeah, let's jump on a call with Ian and let's discuss it. Kasi Ian is creating this, parang it's, imagine like a Salamanca, but like sci-fi. And we thought you're the perfect person, perfect person ba ako for it? So it's like, so it was like you're the perfect person for it. So I was like, okay. We hopped onto the call, and I saw Ian. And I was like, holy shit, this is like real. Because I actually interviewed Ian before in this internal, parang for our company, for our agency. We had this like inspiration series where we would learn from different advertising or ex-advertising people. And tamang tama, I was like in your position where I was the one moderating this talk between Ian and Budget. So they
Mm,
were both in like, so parang they also gave their feedback of how they pivoted from advertising to like Lego or like publishing, or their inspiration behind their works. So that's the first time I met Ian. And then when we came back again for Makina, when apparently when Ian heard that I was the writer, sabi niya, game kaagad. Kasi he read Tablay. So I was like, whoa, everything just like spinned into each other. It was a canon event. It
mhm.
was a kind of event for me to like cross paths with Ian for that interview, to make way, cross paths with interview for Ian, and cross paths with Leo to make way for this Makina thing. It just literally, it's such a blessing. It literally just fell into my lap, and I was not going to take no for an answer because of that. So that's what started our Makina process. And
I gotta say, as a fan, when I saw the announcement that you and Ian were teaming up, my initial reaction was, "Oh, huh, that's obvious.
oh,
That's an
talaga?
obvious match." That of course wasn't that obvious because I didn't think of it. But like the moment it was announced, I was like, I I feel like everyone should have thought of that.
That's so interesting because that's exactly what comics readers said. Na, it's an obvious match. I didn't know what what people didn't think about it. I guess that's just like parang nods to how intuitive the partnership was. Like even like how you perceived it was the same way that we felt it. Like I never, bruh, it was like Pacific Rim drifting. Like walang kupas talaga, man. As in, it was just like we flowed so well into each other's like brains. Like everything was like,
Legit, legit. Okay, so the book is like an Ian Santa Maria drawing and the
mhm.
text piece describing that character. I legit can't tell which ones you wrote and which ones he wrote.
Talaga?
I legit cannot tell. It's that seamless.
Ah, synced. We were synced. But like when you saw the back, right? Did you try guessing who wrote which stories?
Oh
There.
no, I didn't even look at the back. Oh, it's right
Yeah.
there. Okay.
Yeah. hmm Now you can play a game where you guess who writes a story, then you check the back who actually wrote it.
Sige. I will do that. I will do that.
Like in
When
your comment saying that you're not sure who wrote the story, that means that it was just so well put together that it felt like a singular entity. Yeah.
when that happens, when you're working with another writer like that, to make it seamless, does the editor have to go in more? No.
He didn't Leo didn't do any fundamental changes to the manuscript. But what we did was we brainstormed together. So we agreed. We had monthly touch base meetings. Touch base. We had monthly touch base meetings where we even had an Excel. Like that's how anal I am about organizing and project managing. And because Ian's more of like what they call that. He's more spontaneous. I remember during the booth, it's like, oh no, sabi Ian, this is the first time that I'm making a sheet for all of my sales. It's like, okay, here, I'll help you. So I'm more of like the organized. I mean, in the team, I'm more of the organized, structural mind. So ito Ian, what if let's create an Excel and a deck Deck.
Deck?
let's, let's, I
Don't you make
treated it
enough
like
decks at work? Like, I
I
would be
know,
sick of making them.
Doy. I make decks for my vacation.
Oh,
That's
wow.
how crazy I am for like organizing things. Like day one, itinerary, mood board, family. Imagine if we went to this. Imagine if we went to Bangkok on day one and did this. Chuk, 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 chuk. Concept board number two. And then we get to be with the elephants on day two. Mga ganon. And these are our Airbnbs. Listicle one, two, three, website link. This is the location of where it is, which is proximal to all of the tourist land, the landmarks. That's how anal I am, and that's why it works. That's why it works for Makina, because there's a lot of nitty gritties and details.
This is
But
also why
yeah,
you're burned out, Kat. I just want to say.
it's the ADHD and the OCD. But yeah, so Ian and I brainstormed on the things. We created a deck where he would put his image, and then I would put the story. Or there's Excels where we comment on each other's work. So it's like we really like build up on each other on the story. So it felt like a very cohesive thing talaga. Yeah.
When you were coming up with the ideas, no? So what were you drawing on for the ideas here? Because it's unlike Salamanca, which is Ian's other two works that are like this. Um, these are a bit more original.
Mm-hmm.
Not that Salamanca isn't original. There's a lot of original stuff in Salamanca, but a lot of this is a little bit more original and very, very much leans more into the sci-fi stuff. Whereas with something like Salamanca, he was definitely leaning back into the more mythological stuff. So,
Yeah.
where did some of the ideas come from in your between the two of you?
Ah. Okay. 2 points. Work. I've been okay. I've been handling vehicle and energy brands for the past 2 years. Sobrang umay na ako sa mga ganon, Doy. As in, everything. I've been selling cars and motorcycles and gas and renewable energy. And so, parang yung what I learned at work, I applied it a lot to the stories in um in in Makina.
I sure
I
hope none
took
of
it.
your clients are watching this.
What? Oh, no, they're fine. Anyway, I'm not. They support my creative work. Then I'm actually
Yeah.
selling them copies. but like I guess stories from today. Na I kind of projected into the future. What would it be? Um, I take cues. I study the Filipino culture. Oh no, I just love watching and observing people, I think that's the best way to write stories. You watch people, you hear what they say, um you analyze why they act that way. What are the quirks of our Filipino culture that you can turn into stories, right? Like one of my favorite stories here, where's that? The Mind Po. Story number 13, 13.
Ah, yes, that one.
It takes inspiration from the live selling culture
Yes.
here in the Philippines. Especially since mahilig din ako mag-online shopping and selling. Live selling in the Philippines is so unique, di ba? Parang you don't see that in other cultures. Yung parang, oh, item number 1, 2, 3 po, isa pong bomber jacket na may fur. Kung gusto nyo po, mag-comment ka na lang sa thing, 1, 2, 3, o may naka-reserve na, o di ba? So like all these fun, unique quirks of Filipino culture, I turned it into stories, or I I really pushed myself specifically for this in the craft of it, na parang the story should not be what it seems like at first glance. For example, itong Balutbot, I think
Ah,
that is
yeah, I love
story
Balutbot. It's number 6.
Balutbot, number 6. While you think, it's just gonna be a story about the robot, di ba? Parang that's your first instinct if you're the writer. What I do is I write initial concepts and then I crumple the paper and then I throw it away. that's the first shit. The first shit are the most gets mo. Parang the first thing you think of, that's what everyone's gonna think of. So I shit out the first batch, and then I go back to it and I write again. And I said,
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
interesting. Oh.
that's how I think. So I write down, parang I filter out what everyone's going to do, and then I scrap it. And then I push my brain to like, let's try again. Take it from another angle. What's another possible spin for it? Or what are they thinking? Then I reset the clock and then I write again. And then I said, what if it's not just a balut bot? What if it's taken from the POV of a British blogger, di ba? Or a fan blogger na coming to the Philippines na, hi guys, so today on this video, di ba? Parang we're going to try the balut or however the Filipinos call it, di ba? Yung mga ganon. So, taking stuff from an interesting or a unique POV na parang that hasn't been thought of before, or I wish that no one has thought of yet. So that's what I do.
Even if somebody's thought of it, nobody's done it.
Yeah.
Right. So, but the amazing thing about Makina and about Tablay is, as we mentioned before, right? Like, as much as you make it science fiction, you're really talking about the present. So all of the stuff that we're mentioning, it is playing on the present moment, right? What is it about putting it in a science fiction context, distancing itself from, adding that little bit of distance from actual reality, that makes
Mm.
it easier to talk about that reality, because it seems counterintuitive, right? So what do you think that is? Like, what do you think the relation is there?
I think by putting it in the future, you kind of give yourself like a safety shield or a safety net to talk about certain elements of our current reality. You kind of put a blanket, or I would say a blanket, a net, or like a filter. Yeah, yeah. You put a filter over it saying this isn't real, but it's reflecting reality, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, so if ever, let's say, you're criticized for it, there's that exit door. It's like in the end, sci-fi yan, diba? Parang no, this is just thing, but it gives you enough. It gives you enough courage to talk about things without having to face the real life consequences of getting incarcerated. Just kidding. or or what do you call that? Or basically,
Careful what you say.
exactly. Ayon. So another hot topic. Basically, it reflects reality, but also bridges possibilities of the future. Gets mo? That's what I love
Gets.
about sci-fi. It it shows where we are, where we can be, and like the spectrum of everything in between. I feel like science is like magic. Science is magic, but it's grounded on reality. Kasi everything we're seeing now, especially in our day and age where technology is really becoming fast, like especially with AI, like you AI is it's so crazy how it has taken over so many industries so fast. I'm talking about generative AI. Kasi baka AI naman, it has been there for years.
Yeah.
It's just not as used or not as essential as it was a few years back. But now it's shifting industries, especially the creative industries, a lot of debate over generative AI, 'di ba? Even the ethics of using it na voice actors voice actors can lose their jobs because a machine can just Duy code, 'di ba? Their thing can be Duy coded, 'di ba? Like one day suddenly may podcast na sounds like Duy Tano but isn't actually Duy, right? They can steal your voice, your face, everything. So it's a matter of good practice and good governance, I guess, to be able to like mitigate these things. It's also a personal practice din na what is ethical, diba? What is right. There's so many gray spaces right now. Like we don't know how to handle it. Technology is like progressing much faster than our own personal morals, diba? Our own choices, our own society. That's a crux din of what Tablay also
Yeah.
parang shed light on. Like what happens to us as the human race if we are left behind by our own technology. So a lot of things to take into consideration. And that's what happens in Makina din. Um the main story of Makina is that there's this machine with lost memories. The machine was tasked with recording history, but a lot of its data was corrupted in its past life. And as it is kind of reborn into this new cycle, it has to find those missing memories. That's why parang it syncs up with this human being. And then all the memories are all the stories that you see inside this little book. Even the Bakunawa, which is like my favorite, the biggest. Hey, where's that?
Yes.
This secret, which we were not supposed to expose, but then we got so excited for it. Mentioning. Wow! Ang haba! It's so long.
Jesus Christ. You know,
You should.
Ian is not a stranger to that kind of image. Did you see what he drew for his wife's wedding? For his
No.
wife's wedding dress?
No.
He drew like 7 diwata on the train of her wedding dress.
What?
It's amazing. He's crazy.
So good. Like even I don't understand. Like this Bakunawa, when I got there, he was literally just sketching it. Parang, chuk, 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 chuk. Like, oh hi cat, how are you? Yeah. Later on, there was this whole fucking dragon, like, like, like 9 foot dragon with no pencil, literally straight on marker, just creating the shapes in his mind, and somehow making that. Oy, mag-picture tayo. Tapos na. Like the whole thing was like laid out. I was like, you're crazy.
He's insane.
Yeah.
And of course, like a lot of that is God-given talent, but Ian actually like, works really hard on his craft.
The
Just
devil works
draws
hard, but Ian works harder.
just all the time.
Yeah.
Kat, when you mentioned earlier for Tablay that your concept it is also in your intro to Makina, but your concept for sci-fi is what good is progress if humans are left behind. AI was the first thing I thought of. Like generative AI was the first thing I thought of. Also, I'm wondering why in this day and age of generative AI, inuna natin yung artists and writers to and voice actors and whatever. And meanwhile, I still have human beings charting my charts for me at work. It's really annoying.
Exactly.
So
No, the world is so unfair for
it
that.
just goes backwards. Uh, is there any intent to delve further into the world of Makina?
Yes. I mean, so far, well, literally, we just launched it 2 days ago. So if
Congratulations.
thank you, if all goes well, who knows? There could be a sequel. So excited. Oh, have you seen the cameo? Have you seen the cameo inside the book?
That's great.
So it has a little Easter egg inside the book.
And you don't name her either.
Yup.
We
To
just
protect intellectual property.
protect intellectual property.
Yeah, so it's the engineer and the pilot
Mhm.
with different designs.
Slightly different just to protect that. See, that's
Different, yeah.
yeah, that's really smart. Kat, my last question for you is I know you're taking a break. What's next?
The Tablay graphic novel. Actually, I'm not taking a break per se, but I'm really just dialing down on all of my, I guess, public events. Just taking time to rest and just like parang be thankful for everything that happened this year because we launched so many things. Imagine that, diba? Our next 7 weeks. Um, at one point, I was working on those 3 projects sabay-sabay. which was like a few weeks ago. Tablay the graphic novel, our next 7 weeks, and Makina all at the same time. It's like, at
And
least
when is the Tablay graphic novel coming out?
hopefully next year, July 2024 at the Philippine International Comics Fest.
Which will
Yeah,
be in person next year.
yes, we'll be first next year. So good luck to us for that, because we're making progress. But yeah, I think I showed you some pages, but I'll go
Yeah.
show you the 12 pages that have been made now. I mean, but of course, those are the fully rendered. We're way past that in terms of things. But the one that's presentable to the public, and hopefully, sana if God willing, we can have like an ashcan or basta parang may preview. Diba, wouldn't that be
Yeah.
nice?
Nice little
Preview
trailer.
print out of the first how many pages? That would be so cool.
Will you be cutting it up into multiple volumes or just one volume?
No, it's gonna be one big boy, like one thick boy.
Good luck finishing that for July.
Yeah.
Why don't I have a question? I know you draw. Why aren't you drawing it?
I don't have the confidence, especially for mecha.
Okay.
Like Paul does the mecha so well. Like his grasp over shapes. So cute.
All right. Katrina Olan, everybody. Thank you for joining the show, Kat. I think a lot
Sure.
of people learned a lot. So if you guys have you want to know where to find her, Kat closes off by plugging all of your stuff and where to find them.
Okay. So just to recap everything that wow, recap. Just to recap everything that you've heard in this 2 hour talk, 2 hours. This 2 hour talk.
It's like one and a
I'm
half.
2.5. Okay.
One and a half.
1.5. To recap everything in this 1.5 hour talk that I had today, my name's Katrina F. Olan. I am a sci-fi author and also a romance webtoon creator now. um, and you can check me out at my pages. So it's at Katrina F. Olan. I think Doi will put that naman in the description below. So like and subscribe to his channel. I've always wanted to say that. I've always wanted to say that. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Dui's channel. You can see the buttons here. There. So at Katrina F. Olan Stories. You can find me on Facebook and on Instagram. And there I have my whole ecosystem of pages you can visit, from Tablay, which is at Tablay Novel, our next 7 weeks, at our next 7 weeks, um, and other pages that you can visit. So my books are also on Amazon. Tablay is on Amazon Kindle as an ebook. But we also do paperback delivery for international and local. So just check us out at our bio at the Facebook page and the Instagram page and the Twitter page. That is why I centralized all my things now, because I cannot handle 6 social media pages. Every
And of
time someone
course, everyone locally can buy your books from Shopee and Lazada.
Shopee, Lazada, Comic Kit, Mount Cloud, Mount Cloud,
Summit.
Librariangelo, Summit Books, and Pumple Pie. Wow, see, we made so many friends along the way. That's the real treasure.
That's the real treasure. Thank
The
you,
real
Kat.
treasure.
This was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Duy. Hope you enjoy, everyone. Thank you.